We are back, and I am still with Jeff Dornik, and we're going to keep this thing rolling here. But yeah, it's just, as I was saying before, the stream just said, yeah, you can't say that. Because that's kind of what it felt like when it said, hey, your stream has been ended. I'm like, by whom? Because I didn't hit the button. But anyway, so yeah, the whole concept of making social media actually social again and to stop rewarding the people who are just blatantly lying to you for attention would be a wonderful thing. Because as somebody who, I mean, granted, I am semi-retired now. I do this for a living, but it's only because I have two other retirement checks coming in and a bunch of other side projects that I do that pay me while I'm still building this. But I would love to just be able to put my content out somewhere and and find out, is this stuff that people actually want to listen to, or or am I just being suppressed? Because when we first started streaming on X, everybody was finding us and they loved it. I mean, there were times, now granted, not so much during the day, because in this time slot I'm competing with some pretty big names, but at night we were getting, we're used to being happy that within a day or so we'd have 100 hits on Spreaker per
Yeah.
episode. We were getting upwards of 1,000 to 1,200 and on live. And then Elon started changing the algorithm again. And it's like every time I get it figured out, he changes it again. And I'm like, why do we even need an algorithm? That's the whole reason why people follow people that they want to interact with. I don't need an algorithm to tell me what I should be able to see. If I want to see it, I'll follow them. If I don't, I will block them or I will mute them. We don't need content police
Yeah.
because and the thing that drives me crazy about the algorithm is all they're doing is training people to be as outlandish as possible because that's how you get paid. And that's annoying to me because as somebody that really does try to be as center of the road as possible, and I'm not saying I'm perfect at it. I do have right-leaning ideas. So there are times when people are like, "Oh, you sound like Trump." And I'm like, "Well, that's because I agree with him this time." Then other people, "Well, you sound like a Democrat." Well, that's because sometimes I happen to still agree with them too, just not the crazy ones.
Yeah.
But those people are the ones that get buried because, it's not engaging. It's not, "Oh, this isn't controversial enough." So, that's one of
Well,
the reasons why I was originally excited by the concept of Pickaxe, but then I realized that since there isn't an app, I'm always working when I'm at my computer, it's really hard for me to do anything over there. So I'm glad, that's why I said earlier, I'm glad the app is finally coming because I may actually start trying to migrate more things over there and see what I can build over there since I'll be able to do it more in my spare time now. Not that
yeah.
I
Well,
ever will.
well, yeah. Well, it'll be fun too because I think that the worldview that you're kind of describing that you have again, it's not conducive to the algorithmic based social media platforms, like you said, because it's not creating outrage. Like common sense doesn't create outrage. It doesn't create engagement because somebody sees it, they probably agree with it, but they're like, I don't have anything else to add to the conversation because I agree with what Rick is saying there. Whereas if you said something outlandish, and then somebody's going through like, I can't believe that he said that, blah 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 blah. I'm gonna fight you. That then drives engagement. That then drives views, which then allows the platforms to sell more advertising because they're doing everything based on clicks and impressions and all that kind of stuff. So that's why the outrage. That's why the algorithms love the outrage, is because it gets them more views, it inflates their numbers and all that. For me, I'm trying to build a completely different model to where we can kind of bring some sanity back to the conversations and bring some nuance, focus a little bit more on some of the long form content, whether it's the shows or whether it's articles or newsletters or things like that, because then we can start actually having legitimate conversations. Let's encourage people to discuss and debate and to disagree with each other. Here's how you actually disagree with somebody. Put up a better argument, not just a bunch of insults like you get on all these other platforms. And so for me, a really big theme for me as we're launching Pickaxe is this idea of declaring your independence and stop allowing other people to have a hold of over you. Don't feel like you have to play this team sport mentality, which is like rampant on social media today. Where it's like if you're a Trump supporting Republican, you have to support every single thing that he does. Like I've got friends of mine that are completely supporting Trump and every single thing that he does, and they're trying to defend him on all this Epstein stuff. And it's crazy because like I never thought that people that I know personally would all of a sudden be downplaying what Jeffrey Epstein was doing. Like literally, I'm getting into conversations with people where they're like, "Well, is there proof that he's a pedophile? Is there proof that there was, raping children on the island?" And I'm like, "Is this really your argument that you're downplaying Jeffrey Epstein?" I never thought that we'd see the day when MAGA Republicans were going to be like, "Oh yeah, that Epstein guy, he was a little creepy, but he wasn't that bad." That's where all of this is going, because they're starting from the presupposition, how do I defend my guy? What I want to say is, let's take a step back. Forget your alliances, forget your party affiliation, forget your favorite politician or favorite celebrity or favorite fill in the blank. What do I believe? Why do I believe it? And then let's have an honest, rational conversation about it. Like, for example, like one of the guys that's on Pickaxe that I love talking to, his name is Ted Rawl. He's a far leftist political cartoonist and columnist, right? I have him on my show. I love the conversations. We disagree with each other on the vast majority of things, but there are certain points where we find a lot of agreement. Like, let's get out of foreign interventionist wars. Let's we got to deal with AI, because AI is running rampant, and if we don't put some guardrails up, then it's the end of humanity as we know it, kind of a thing. There's a handful of things where it's like we can find agreement if we enter into a good faith conversation. And I think that that's kind of what I'm trying to instill into Pickaxe and really set the example in everything that we do, is from that standpoint, to where we're not incentivizing people to be rage posting and all that. We're kind of de-incentivizing that to a certain degree.
Oh, yeah, no, I have noticed that. I mean, like I said, I am over there. I'm just not over there as much as I am everywhere else, because I'm, like I said, when I'm not sitting in front of my computer, I'm usually doing millions of things on my phone. So, and usually social media is kind of how I keep up with what I'm going to write about for all the other
Yeah.
places that I work for. So yeah, I do enjoy the atmosphere over there. I do enjoy, I mean, the few things that I have posted, I mean, I haven't posted anything recently, but the few things that I had posted to see what I had going on, even though I don't have that many people following me because I'm not over there that much, did have it by scale a large amount of engagement, which is why I am excited that I may actually be able to find time to be over there more often. Because, like I said, if especially if I'm going to continue to pay, because what a lot of people don't understand is to use platforms like Restream that will allow you to put content in multiple places by with one click of a button. They have monetized that to the point for the places that you post to. Like, I can't do that anymore through X unless I have the blue check mark, which you now have to pay for.
Right.
And they did that on purpose. And I'm like, and I at one point I had, short of the gold check mark, the highest blue check mark you could pay for, and it wasn't worth it. And that was when it was only like 25 bucks. Now he wants almost 50 for that. And I'm like, I'm not paying that.
Yep.
So I went down to the lower tier, and now we're buried even more. And and just as a test, I had somebody who donated us enough money to try out the gold check on the station account for like a month,
Hmm.
and it did nothing. Gave them $200 and it did next to nothing. I mean, trust, it looked really cool on the side of the screen because we had the nice little cool square and the gold check mark, so it looked really pretty, but it did nothing. And I'm like, I'm not going to keep giving you guys money to do nothing, because the whole point of this is to try to build something. And
Right.
if you're just going to keep burying me when I'm a paying customer, I mean, it's one thing if I'm using the app for free and you decide, the algorithms, well, we don't really like what you're talking about or whatever. But if I'm a paying customer and you're still basically holding me underwater, that is insane to me.
Yeah.
But then the other thing that terrifies me about X is there are occasional moments when I will get above what I call the X thermal layer, kind of where everybody starts being able to see you. Yeah, for
Hmm.
those of you who don't know, that's it's an old sonar term, where basically below that layer, almost nothing can find you unless they're down there with you. Above that layer, almost everything can see you, no matter how quiet you're trying to be. So that's what I've kind of always considered it, because you get a little bit of engagement and suddenly everybody starts being able to see you. And then it brings out all the troll accounts that were supposed to be stopped by this blue check verification process that are still automated and bots. And then he was like, well, we'll start making the automated accounts identify themselves as automated, which I've seen a few that do, and that's awesome.
Hmm.
But I also can tell by some of the language and syntax that these people are claiming to be from America that aren't, or they are automated and they're still not marked that way.
Yeah. I think something like 60% or 65% of all engagement on social media is are bots, and that's just the reality of what's going on. And and so we're actually doing verification the way that Elon led us to believe he was going to do it. And so like with us, so number one, we're not charging for verification. So you verify who you are, make sure that you're a real person based in the US, at least 18 years old. You get a blue check mark for free. We're not charging anything, all that kind of stuff. So if you don't have a blue check mark on Pickaxe, then you're never going to trend. You can still post, you can still build an audience, you can still engage, post comments, all that kind of stuff. But you're not going to be you're not going to be a recommended profile and on the side. You're not gonna trend. Your engagement will not impact a verified account's ability to trend on the platform. So essentially, it's rendering the bots useless within Pickaxe. So everything that we're doing is trying to amplify human beings that we can verify are human beings. Now the problem with X and the reason why they're not being successful with this is number one, they're basically allowing anybody and everybody to get verified as long as they're willing to pay them the base amount of money each month in order to have the blue check mark. So a lot of people are getting verified. They're still an anonymous account. You have no idea who they are, and then they use a bot in order to push out all sorts of crazy posts and all that kind of stuff in order to game the system. Now, the other problem is that they're not actually weeding out the unverified accounts. And that's another problem that's happening on X and these other social media platforms is that if you have an unverified account, you can still impact what trends. You can still show up in the trending tab. You can still help to game the system even with an unverified account. And the main reason is because so if you have a blue check mark, I forget which threshold it is, then all of a sudden you either have less ads or no ads. Well, that then drives into X's bottom line because then how do they sell enough ads if they're getting everybody verified? So they still have to allow the unverified accounts to have some form of presence or ability to be a part of the platform and all that kind of stuff because they need them engaged if they're going to be able to inflate the numbers with engagement and views and all that kind of stuff to be able to sell advertising. And that's the other thing too, is that when you actually think about it, the bots are inflating the numbers on all these social media platforms. They're inflating the views, they're inflating the impressions, the clicks, the everything, which then when you kind of think about it, it's kind of dishonest. Because then they turn around and then they sell you the total number of views or impressions that you'll get on a post if you're willing to pay for it to boost a post or advertise or something along those lines. But how many of those are bots? How many of those are real people? You have no idea. I don't even know if they know or if they even care. So there's a lot of problems with this within the social media sphere. And I think that the one thing, and I was talking to somebody about this yesterday, I think that they're in too far to really truly deal with the bot situation because if they truly got rid of all the bots, like just wiped them out, rendered them useless on the platform, all of that, I think everybody's numbers across the board would significantly drop overnight. And I think that their advertising dollars would significantly drop overnight. And so I think that to them it's a necessary evil to have the bots on there because they're in it too deep and too far to truly be able to cut them out without really screwing themselves.
Yeah, it's just I don't even really know where to go with that because another thing that kind of is driving me crazy is when they started the monetization process and then they started the ability to build groups instead of just group DMs. I started putting myself into some of the groups that talked about helping you monetize, and it's turned into this whole thing of you'll see them post something about once a day and be like, "I got to 5 million impressions. I can help you get there too. Send me a DM and we'll talk." And I'm like, so you're basically selling your monetization, supposed expertise, and then probably engaging bots and everything else to get it there. And I'm like, that's a direct violation of X's terms of service. And these people are just putting this stuff out openly in their groups. And I'm like, I thought this stuff wasn't supposed and it's just and I get it. It's a business. I see this stuff all the time because we've had a YouTube channel for a while, but we've only been actually streaming content over there for a couple of years. So we're just now really starting to get traction now that they've taken the stranglehold off a little bit. So we're actually starting to get some new subscribers over there. But I see it all the time because something will scan our YouTube channel and see that we have a low following. They're like, we can help you boost your following. We can do this. We can do this. It'll only cost you this much money. And I'm like, yeah, you're just gonna send my link to somewhere like freaking Kuala Lumpur,
Yeah.
and then have a bunch of bots clicking on it, and it's never gonna do me any good anyway for a 19.99 per month. And I'm just like, I just the I mean, I am a capitalist, but I never expected to find so much of the Ferengi version of capitalism alive in America and even worldwide today because it's like money at all costs. It's never really been my thing.
Yeah. Well, they
No.
just make it so complicated and so convoluted that you as a creator, you don't have time to dive into the ins and the outs of the algorithms to figure it out because you're producing a show, you're running a network, you're doing all like you don't have time to dive into the technical, source code within the algorithms to figure out like what actually works and what doesn't work. And so that's part of the problem is that I think that these platforms, whether you talk about Facebook, X, Instagram, fill in the blank, they all use the algorithms partially because of advertising, partially to inflate numbers, partially to get us more engaged, which means fighting with each other and all that kind of stuff. But then the other side of it is that people then figure out, okay, how do I game the system? Because they're setting up the system, I'm going to play within that sandbox. So then once people start figuring that out, then they change it again because they don't want people gaming the system. And then give it a couple months, people figure out how to game it, they game it, and then they change the algorithm again. This is this never-ending cycle that these platforms have to play if they're going to continue to play this algorithm game. And again, I just think they're in too deep to really bring themselves back out of it because it's just going to keep getting worse and worse and worse as time goes on.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're already seeing it here. And the funny thing about the number of bots that have come out, one of the shows that I do is actually a conspiratainment show. And we did a show probably a couple years ago on the dead internet theory and the fact that almost nothing on the internet is actually organic anymore. It's all being driven by bots and other stuff. And the more we find out about more bots being everywhere, I'm like, we may have been onto something.
Yeah. Honestly, you probably are. It's like the entire system is set up that way. But then, the next step is that these platforms are actually going to be replacing content creators on their platform. And that's where really where this is going. And so I was talking to a financial like an investor who sits in on all the shareholder meetings and all that kind of stuff with these platforms. And what was interesting is that Facebook is invested $65 billion into developing artificial intelligence, but the end game of what they're actually trying to do is develop artificial intelligence for the purpose of creating AI generated content creators because their ultimate goal is to replace the human content creators on the platform. So then that way they can control what's being said, control their Overton window. They can claim to be free speech because they're controlling all the creators that are on their platform. They don't have to do a rev share. They don't have to pay creators or anything like that. So then they help their bottom line and all that kind of stuff. And they're basically conditioning us all to just be consumers and not creators. And so like that's going to be a major problem. I mean, Mark Zuckerberg with Facebook, one of the things that they're doing as well, they're getting access to if you connect your photos on your phone to Facebook or Instagram, you're actually giving them permission to have access to the last 30 days of photos and videos within your phone that you haven't even uploaded to Facebook, but you're giving them permission to take those and then use those to train their artificial intelligence. One of the other things that they're going to be rolling out is the ability to basically collect a database on you based upon all of your posts, all of your photos, all of your images, all that. And then if you happen to die, then they can then use an AI bot you with your own database to allow you to keep posting even after death. So that way your friends and family can still quote unquote connect with you. The other thing that
That's
Zuckerberg, it's crazy, it's super creepy. The other thing that Zuckerberg is saying is that and I forget the exact numbers, but essentially he said that human beings have the capacity to have 30 close friends, right? And typically on social media, you might have 10 or 11, right? That are actually close, not just acquaintances, but actual friends. So what we're gonna do as Facebook is we're gonna fill that gap. So you've got 10 close friends, but you have capacity for 30. So what if we made 20 AI generated friends for you to engage with? That way we can fill your cup. We can make you more fulfilled. We can do, and you're just like, is this really the path that we're going? Is that you're going to create customized AI friends for me to engage with that are not even real people? Like, does Zuckerberg even hear himself when he's saying this crap?
Well, the good news is when this whole social media being addictive suit lands, there may not be a Facebook left, so who knows?
Well, there is that. That one's a very difficult and complex situation. Have you followed the story and what's actually being alleged?
Oh, yeah.
Y
Mhm.
like, literally, there's this girl that the mom is saying that she got addicted to YouTube at the age of 6 and was watching a couple of hours of YouTube videos every day, and then by the time that she was 16 years old, she was on social media and online for 16 hours a day. Now, I always say there's two different things can be true at the exact same time. Number 1, Facebook and Instagram, they should not be allowing children on the platform, and they are intentionally making their platform as addictive as possible because again, that's what makes them the most money. So that is true, yes. But also as a parent, why like there are multiple things that you can do as a parent in order to not allow your daughter to be online for 16 hours a day. Like what you could do is you could take away the phone, you could take away the iPad, you could shut down access to the computer, you could shut off Wi-Fi if they're finding ways around it, just use an Ethernet plug-in cord. Like there's multiple things that you can do as a parent to nip this in the bud and not allow it to get out of control to the point to where your daughter is on the phone on social media for 16 hours a day, which means she only has 8 hours. That's probably the majority of its sleep where she's not on social media. So I feel like that case in and of itself, it could backfire on the people that feel like it's going to go after, Facebook and Zuckerberg and all that kind of stuff because of the fact that, like, what about the parental responsibility to protect your kids and keep your kids off of social media and not allow them to be on there for 16 hours a day? I would argue no minor should be on social media at all. I think Australia is crazy bonkers, way too authoritarian. But I kind of think that they're right on one thing, and is that if you're under the age of 18, I don't think that you should be on social media, both because of the addictive nature and then also how dangerous it is with predators and this new, what is it, 764, terrorist group and all that kind of stuff. So
Well, yeah, I mean, well, the thing about it is a lot of the stuff that they're alleging isn't just tied to things like social media, though, either. I mean, we have become a society where all of us are staring at blue screens for hours on end, whether it's work, whether it's television.
yep,
And there have been dozens and dozens of studies about what constant access to blue light does to not only your REM sleep patterns, your ability to concentrate, all these different things. So you take all of that already, and then you put this whole risk reward thing going on with scrolling and oh, I've posted something and 10 people have liked it. And then you post something else and 20 people like it. And then you start getting the dopamine hits, like the same thing when you pull a slot machine lever. And
yep,
yeah, those are things that children should not be being exposed to. And I have had this argument with every single one of my children who are now raising children themselves. And I'm like, there are reasons that your mother and I made you go outside.
yep.
Make your children go outside.
Totally. Well, it's like we have a 3-year-old and no screens, no anything like that. The majority of his friends are just like they're watching shows, they're get on the iPad, they're doing all this thing. It's like it's educational stuff. It's like okay, but it's still screen time, right? And it's interesting because the handful of times that we've allowed him to watch something, it's usually like if he's sick or a very special like occasion. He'll watch like 10 minutes of there's a show on Netflix called Trash Truck. It's like very basic, minimal, low stimulation, all that kind of stuff. Now, the thing is that, and I've noticed this when he sits there and watches television, you see his face and he zones out, and this happens with every single kid. Why has that happened? Okay, so if you sit down and you read a book to your child, right? What happens? So you're reading a story. They have to imagine the scene playing out. So they're visualizing it in their mind. They have to imagine what the character sounds like when the character is speaking. So they're hearing, their brain is actually filling in the gaps of what they're reading. So their critical thinking skills are being developed. This is why reading is so good for kids, is because it's forcing their brain to imagine things, to fill in the blanks, to tie words with images and words with sounds and all of that. And even visualize or imagine what something smells like, what something tastes like. Like your brain is being stimulated by reading. Now, you watch a movie, what happens? The TV is filling in all the gaps for you. So the TV, so you're just watching it. Your brain doesn't have to work to actually process anything. It's giving you the audio, it's giving you the words, it's giving you the visuals, it's playing out the scene in front of you. You don't have to imagine anything because it's all right there. So what ends up happening? It actually stunts your brain development because your brain is no longer having to work. So if you're sitting there and you're watching an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours of television every day as a 5-year-old kid, what is that going to do to your brain development compared to those that aren't in front of screens? Like, you're going to fall way behind because your brain is not being challenged. It's not being stimulated in the right way in order to develop. And that's, I think, what a lot of parents, they see TV and they see, screen time as a babysitter or a reward or things like that. But what you're actually doing is you're actually harming the brain development of your child, and actually not only just getting them addicted, but then also really slowing down their ability to develop and grow and critically think and all of that.
Well, yeah, well, it's funny that you bring that up because there's actually a study that came out earlier this week that shows that for the first time ever, studies are now showing that the generation that is coming up into adulthood now is dumber than the generation that came before, and
Yeah.
that's the first time in history. And again, I think a lot of it is because I mean, when TV became a thing, my dad always called it the idiot box, but then my dad and my mom got divorced, so for the longest time, my mom was using the TV as a babysitter until, it got to the point where even my brother was then old enough to go outside and play. And then she's like, okay, take your brother outside and go play. I'm like, okay, cool, whatever. So then the whole Gen X thing kicked in and we were out till the street lights came on. And if we weren't, then we got yelled at, all that fun stuff. But I think there's so much of that that has been replaced because we had TV and we had phones, and I would say that to a lesser degree, even when we just turn on the radio, it's not quite as bad. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I am probably, and according to my programming director, who I've had take over some of my responsibilities, I'm about 3-4 years behind the curve because I resisted the urge to go into video streaming until almost everybody else was already there, because I prefer the audio format, because then, even if I'm listening to something, there's still parts of it that my brain has to fill in. If I'm listening and I'm watching, then my brain's basically on autopilot. And it's one of those things where, look, once you're an adult, whatever you do is your business. But when you take on the responsibility of raising a child, part of that job is to make sure that when the child reaches a certain age, they know how to be a productive member of society. And we as a society have dropped that ball. But the thing about the fact that we've dropped that ball is this: our government for the longest time wanted us to drop that ball because they wanted us to turn the raising of our children over to them. And the whole dumbing down is another way to do that. The fact that they don't, even if TV was a bad thing at home, you were still being taught and engaged on how to critically think in school. And they don't even do that anymore
Yep.
because they don't need you to do that. And the funny thing is, this has been something that's been going on for over 100 years, because I did some research when we first started doing the video streaming, because I was able to pull up some cool stuff and do some things that I hadn't done before. And I started looking at the Rockefeller Group and all the work that they did that was supposedly philanthropic to change the face of our education system. And it turns out their entire motivation was to create a populace that was just smart enough to work in their factories, but too dumb to question why they're still just working in factories. And that has been our education model ever since. And everybody wonders why, we can spend hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to educate our children, and they can't read past fourth grade level, and most of them can't do math to save their life anymore.
Yeah.
And
Well,
it's
but
by
but
design.
school. I wrote a chapter about this in the book social. So I think it was in Social Injustice. It was the first book that we put out, and it was about how they were using education and really breaking it down in a way that they're basically training our children to be either employees or reliant upon the government. And you trust the experts in everything, right? So when you're in class, you're a part, a class of, let's say, 30 kids, right? Like, you have to obey the teacher. The teacher is the king of your class. You have to trust the experts. So whatever you're being taught, you're supposed to regurgitate whatever you're told from the age of 3 years old all the way up until you graduate college. You regurgitate what you're taught, and then you're tested on it, and then your test performance dictates how quote unquote smart you are. But the thing is, they're not actually teaching you how to think. They're not teaching you to think for yourself. They're teaching you to be an employee. You take orders from your boss. You do tasks that they tell you to do, and then you get a performance review. So from the age of 3 years old all the way on, you are being trained to be an employee or reliant upon the government for everything. What does that do? That centralizes the power. Now, if we go back to what our founding fathers originally intended for this country, it was a decentralized system to where everybody kind of worked for themselves for the most part. Yeah, if you're a kid, you were going to go work for your neighbor's farm or a blacksmith or whatever it is. But in general, everybody kind of worked for themselves. You had one family who had the general store, one family in your town, they were the blacksmith, a bunch of families were farmers, and you'd all bring your goods into the town, and you'd have your farmers market, and you had a small decentralized ecosystem where everybody was self-supportive. Everybody owned a piece of property, everybody owned a home, everybody had all of that. But as they can get you to not think as an entrepreneur or a business owner, and instead to think about yourself as an employee. I mean, just look at all the numbers that come out for when it comes to the economy. They're always looking at jobs. They don't look at how many new businesses were started, how many small businesses are there. They look at jobs. Why did they do that? It centralizes the power to a handful of big corporations and big government. So everything is about centralization. Now think about this. If you go back to COVID, you had the vaccine mandates for a lot of jobs. A lot of people either lost their job or are forced to get a vaccine against their will. Why? Because everybody works for a big corporation. Everybody has a job. Now think about this. You wouldn't have had vaccine mandates in general if everybody worked for themselves, if everybody had their own business. Then guess what? You would have had a much lower number of people getting the COVID shot. But it's because we have this centralized system, and then the government and big corporations use that to their advantage because we're reliant upon them for everything. Now think about this as well. Look at what Elon Musk is doing with artificial intelligence. He's using AI and Optimus robots in order to replace all human beings in the workforce. And he's saying within the next few years, there's going to be a billion Optimus robots. There's going to be no need for human beings to work at all, and all of that. How does that become a thing? That becomes a thing because everybody has a job, and all the big corporations are going to fire you because they can replace you with a robot that can work for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week that you can't do, and they don't have to pay them a salary. So when you think about it, we are screwing ourselves and we're screwing our children and everybody into the future because we have this mindset of get a job. Don't get a job, start a business. That's the best way that you can protect yourself to decentralize this system is stop caring about jobs, stop caring about job numbers, stop caring about the stock market, stop caring about all that kind of stuff. Figure out how can I be self-sufficient with my own company, with my own job, with my own income that's not reliant upon somebody else. If you're reliant upon somebody else, then guess what? You are essentially a slave to whether it's that company or the government for all of your revenue.
And you are 1,000% right, which is one of the reasons why, I mean, for the longest time, I was self-employed. And then after Obama came, actually, even before he was sworn in, everybody could see the writing on the wall, and suddenly all my contracts started drying up and they weren't paying on time anymore. So eventually I had to go back to work for the man again. And I did that from about 2009 until 2023. So 3 years ago, now we're coming up on 3 years ago later this year, I took early retirement, started doing all this full time instead of just doing it as a hobby. And yeah, I mean, trust me, there are months when I'm like, "Ooh, I gotta figure out how I'm gonna pay this bill." But I wouldn't trade it for anything because I'm not chained to anybody else anymore. And it's funny because when people start figuring out all the things I do in a day, they're like, "How do you do all that?" I'm like, I just do." I mean, I run a production company. We've launched a music label recently. There's all kinds of things that I'm doing. I've got 2 books that I'm working on, 3 technically, counting a children's book that started as an idea for kind of a birthday keepsake for one of my grandkids, and somebody read it and they were like, "Yeah, you should put this out." But unfortunately, because I got sick and have been in between losing my brother in November and fighting whatever this is off and on for now 2 months, I just, even though I still am doing a lot of things, I'm only doing about 2/3 of what I was. But I mean, part of it is just motivation. It's hard to be motivated when you realize that you're making other people rich.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah.
When you
And what's crazy is that this is where this is where the left is right. When it comes to things, there is the income gap that is happening. The rich are getting richer, and the poor are getting poorer, and the middle class is being pushed into one direction or the other. There's going to be no more middle class, and so the majority of the middle class is being pushed into the poor. There's a handful of them that are being pushed into the wealthy, but there is no more middle class, and there is like the ultra wealthy, which are to a certain degree abusing the ultra poor, and that is a major problem. And a lot of conservatives and a lot of Republicans don't want to admit that because they're capitalists. But is it really capitalism if you have these big corporations are working hand in hand with the government to pick winners and losers and screw everybody else? Like that's not the way that our founding fathers intended for it to be. Not to centralize power and have a handful of elites that have all the money and all the resources and can do whatever they want. Our founding fathers saw a decentralized system. That's why they had states' rights. That's why they made the federal government the least powerful government out of the entire country, and that the closer you were to the individual, the more power you had. But even from an economic standpoint, we are screwing ourselves as a country as long as we keep thinking about things when it comes to big corporations. And this is one of my biggest criticisms of President Trump, is that what he's doing is America first when it comes to America as an entity and big corporations and the stock market and all that kind of stuff. But it's not always what's best for Americans, the individual. And I think that's something that needs to change. And we need to change our mindset that just because something is good for America, like let's say artificial intelligence or government contracts for big corporations or fill in the blank, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's what's best for all of us. I mean, if we fast track AI in the way that President Trump is trying to, it's going to be the end of humanity as we know it. We're not going to be able to work. We're not going to be self-sufficient at all. We're going to have no more constitutional rights anymore if we allow AI to go where it's going right now. So, just because it's good for America, the entity, does not mean it's good for Americans, the individuals.
No, I completely agree. All right, so believe it or not, we have come to the end of the hour that you requested. So why don't you remind folks what's going on real quick on the way out the door and where they can find you should they choose to connect?
Totally. Yeah. I appreciate it. I always love our conversations, coming on and chatting with you and all that. But you guys check out Pickax. You go to the website right now. It's pickaxe.com. You guys can set up an account, get all ready for the launch. We're launching the app on Tuesday. So this Tuesday, the 24th. It'll be available in the iOS Apple Store as well as the Google Play Store. And I've got a phenomenal dev team that have been putting all this together. I'm really excited about what we're doing. And then all day on Tuesday on the Pickaxe Rumble channel and all of our socials and all that, we're going to be doing a massive live streaming event. We're going to bring on a lot of our big creators that are on the platform. We're going to be talking about all of our features. We're going to be talking about our creator program that we're developing. We're going to be talking about our in-person events, answer some questions, do FAQs, highlight different accounts that are on the platform that you guys want to follow. So make sure you guys are tuning into that as well. But make sure that you guys are, ready on Tuesday to get the app and then to join in. You guys can follow. I mean, we've got Children's Health Defense on there. Diamond and Silk just joined. We've got Vigilant Fox. And Vander. We've got a bunch of awesome people that are on there. We've got Rick over there. We've got the whole network that's over there. So it's gonna be fun because you're gonna be able to connect with people and actually connect with people in a meaningful way that you're not getting to do on social media. And then everything that we do from here on out is for the benefit of human beings and creators. And so it's going to be a lot of fun. So stay tuned. You guys can pre-register for the app right now in the Google Play Store. We're waiting for final, ability to drop it in the App Store. But either way, on the 24th, you guys will get access to both apps. And it's going to be a lot of fun this year.
All right, folks, that's going to do it for hour one. We're going to keep this thing rolling, even though the stream's being cranky. I'm getting some look at the behind the scenes numbers, even though it doesn't look like it on the front. We had a lot of folks paying attention, so I'm glad to see that. So hopefully we have a lot of folks that'll be downloading your app soon. But my name's Rick Robinson. Hour one is in the books, hour two to come, and we're going to have to get into this whole SCOTUS tariffs decision. one I kind of thought was coming, and then I kind of said, well, maybe not because they're taking forever, and he's still doing them anyway. But yeah, it kind of came down like I kind of expected it to do. I told everybody it was going to kind of be a Solomon splitting the baby kind of thing, and that's kind of where we are. But we'll break that down at the beginning of hour 2. Also, for the rest of the show, don't forget we do our first responders and military tributes. We'll be opening the show with the military tribute for hour 2 coming back. So we'll see you guys on the other side. Stay tuned. Thanks, Jeff. It was fun.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, see you.
Bye. Hello, friends. Do you have a moment so that we may discuss our Lord and Savior Minarchy? No, seriously, I'm just kidding. Hi, my name's Rick Robinson. I am the general manager of KLRNradio.com. We are probably the largest independent podcast network that you've never heard of. We have a little bit of everything, and by that, what I mean to tell you is we have news, pop culture, special events, conspiratainment, true crime, mental health shows, drama productions, and pretty much everything in between. So if you're looking for a new podcast home to grab a little bit of everything that you love all in one place, come check us out. You can find us on X under @KLRNradio. You can find us on our Rumble and our YouTube channels under the same names. You can also find us at KLRNradio.com and pretty much every podcast catcher known to man. So again, feel free to come check us out anytime you like at KLRNradio.
Hi, everyone. This is JJ, the co-founder of Good Pods. If you haven't heard of it yet, Good Pods is like Goodreads or Instagram, but for podcasts. It's new, it's social, it's different, and it's growing really fast. There are more than 2 million podcasts, and we know that it is impossible to figure out what to listen to. On Good Pods, you follow your friends and podcasters to see what they like. That is the #1 way to discover new shows and episodes. You can find Good Pods on the web or download the app. Happy listening.
Not to be a backseat driver, but can you say for sure you got the best monthly payment possible on your auto loan? Could it be that you might have gotten a better deal by shopping the loan at a few places and have a lower car payment? Next time, before you go car shopping, visit Communication Federal Credit Union first. Our auto loan experts will find you a perfect loan and get you the lowest monthly payment we can. Communication Federal, your auto loan experts. Restrictions apply. Federally insured by NCUA.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
The following program contains coarse language and adult themes. Listener discretion is advised.
When the call comes in, somebody answers. Day or night, they're already moving. Calm voices, fast hands, doing the work while the rest of the world freezes. From a headset to a truck, from a badge to a door, they don't stop to count the cost. They step in when it matters. It's not about being seen, it's about being there. They're holding the line when the lines go dead, standing their ground when the world goes dark. They're the calm in the chaos, holding already making sense of the moment. Keeping people alive, keeping things from getting worse. Some run toward danger, some stay behind and hold it together. Different roles, same weight, same promise to show up. When everything's on the line, they're already there. They're holding the line when the lines go dead. Standing their ground when the world goes dark. They're the calm in the chaos, holding the line through the fire, the flood. When everything falls, they don't ask why, they just answer the call. Always standing in the gap for us all. This is service, this is sacrifice, this is how lives are saved. No spotlight, no applause, just showing up again and again. They're holding the line when the world goes dark. When everything's breaking, they hold their ground. They're the calm in the chaos, holding the line. So we raise our voices for the ones who stand. Every voice, every badge, every helping hand. They don't ask why, they just answer the call. Always standing in the gap for us all. Always standing in the gap for us all. For those who run and for those who hold steady. For those who stand in the gap.
And welcome back into the very glitchy Friday edition of the Rick Robinson Show live right here on KLRradio.com. I know everybody's trying to find us. Everybody's like, the chat's not working. We don't know what to do. Just wherever you're finding us, if you can listen, just hang out and listen. It'll be fine. We'll get through it together. I think either Restream's doing something or X got really cranky because of the guest I had on with Hour One, because he's actually part of a competing platform, which I'm really happy to find out is actually getting an app finally, because I really was trying to do a lot of stuff over there just because I don't see. So what happened? What happened was, and then we'll get into the tariffs. So what happened was, Jeff kind of approached me about Pickax. This was right around the time that Elon was finalizing the buy for X, and so nobody really knew what was going to go on over there yet. So I had him on a lot. We were talking about all kinds of different things. I got my account set up over there. We got the network set up over there, and then I spent a lot of time, posting stuff. And then I was like, I hopefully will be doing more over there once there's an app. And then it took longer than I thought for the app to get developed, but that's because Jeff is pretty conscientious and wanted to make sure everything worked and did what it was supposed to do and had the ability to be added to when needed. So, and then at the same time, Elon was rolling out all these really cool things that made it seem like, oh, well, I can actually, make money from my X because I'm on it all the time. And he says that's what he wants, is people that are constantly posting, constantly engaging, live streaming, all the things that I do. And yet nobody ever sees them, which wasn't always true. Because when we first started live streaming, dude, everybody was finding us. Like, people that didn't even know we were existed was like, you guys are awesome. I mean, and granted, there are some production things that we could do differently and a little bit better, but you have to keep in mind we do this on a shoestring budget. Because while this is one of the things that pays me, this is not what pays me full time yet. So there are other things that I do to make income so that I can, one, pour money into this, and two, wait for money to come back out of this, including now a full record label, a production company for podcasts that I do on the side outside of my network, the entire network. I also contribute to several news sites. I'm not saying that just to pat myself on the back. It's just so you guys know, this business is not one that is easy to make money in. but I do treat it as a business. So when he approached me about Pickax and was telling me all the cool things they were planning on doing, I got really excited. But then I realized with everything else that I was trying to do, that having to sit at a computer just to socialize wasn't necessarily something that I always wanted to have to do, which is why I am encouraging anybody who doesn't have an account over there yet to go ahead and go to pickaxe.com, set it up now, and just wait for the apps to drop on Tuesday. Also, go through the verification process, because that way he knows you're a human and you're not getting buried. Because that's something else that Elon kind of said was going to happen was, the people that are willing to go through the verification process, those are going to be the ones that we let everybody see. And then that never really happened, because he realized that if everybody gets verified that they push, then there's no ad revenue anymore. Or less or no ad revenue. So I don't know. I mean, I had really high hopes for X, and I still kind of do. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. There are shows that we put out that will absolutely explode on X, but I am about to start the process to try to build up our YouTube channel now that we understand what the algorithm is currently doing and is pushing the photo version or the vertical version over the landscape, which seems dumb to me, but whatever. And now that Restream offers that option, I'm going to be working this weekend to get all that stuff set up. So hopefully by Tuesday we can run it as a test for our State of the Union stream and be on YouTube in both formats and see which one, if either one grabs a hold of anybody, and kind of go from there. Because right now I have to choose between one or the other. And to do it without giving Restream more money, I have to go in and manually do some things. So we're going to be figuring that out over the weekend. But that's enough about the behind the scenes stuff and the shop talk stuff. Don't forget, come back today first at 3 p.m. Eastern, then tonight for a special Kingdom and Country, followed by the debut of our new Dungeons and Dragons show. I'm not even going to try to say the name of it because I don't remember it. So this isn't so before we get into the tariffs, because we're gonna have to talk about that. I find this take interesting because I agree, and it's one of the first times in my lifetime I ever remember seeing a Congress critter say it out loud. We are a nation of too many laws, and apparently some Congress members are trying to change that. This is from Jeff Charles over at Town Hall. A bipartisan group of senators introduced a bill that would require the federal government to compile and publish a list of every single federal crime on the books. These include statutes that Congress has passed and regulations imposed by federal bureaucracies. Senator Ted Cruz, Republican Texas, and Mike Lee, Republican Utah, along with Chris Coons, Democrat Delaware, introduced the Count the Crimes to Cut Act. So we've got some audio video from that we'll be playing in just a second as soon as I get it queued up. And then we'll get into the tariffs. This will be kind of a looser format for the last part of the show because I didn't really take any breaks while we had Jeff on. And I apologize. I know for everybody who was joining us, I said we would do the military tribute at the top of the hour. However, when I loaded the one that I loaded, I realized too late that it was the wrong one because the titles are kind of similar. Sort of. Don't judge me. Anyways, all right, let me stop talking so I can get this done because lately trying to talk and doing things at the same time is not a very good thing for me. All right, so here is the clip that I wanted to share.
Previous efforts to count the crimes have failed miserably because there are so many of them and because it is so difficult to wrap your arms around 5,500 crimes of varying natures and 300,000 pages of criminal codes and regulations that have now criminalized every act you can possibly imagine for the American people. Report from the Right on Crime organization, Congress needs to make up its mind, mens rea reform and why it matters. So I'd ask consent to do that. Objection. And one of the things that they note in here is that criminal penalties were historically imposed for inherently immoral acts, such as murder, arson, rape, immorality, some could say. It can largely mimic rules to protect public safety. But nowadays, criminal penalties attach to a wide range of actions. Take, for example, 18 U.S.C. 336, which makes it a federal misdemeanor to write a check for less than a sum of $1. Like, that's absurd. I mean, I'm sure some of the folks in the audience don't even know what a check is, but the fact is that's absurd to write a check for less than $1 is a federal offense, right? So you say, all right, well, do you know that? Someone's out there and writes the check for 80 cents and somehow you've violated federal crime.
This is something that, as somebody who's done this kind of work before, that I have been trying to point out to everyone for the longest time. It is almost impossible to know what crimes you are committing anymore, because there are just so many in between local ordinances, state laws, federal laws, all these different things. You can literally step out your door and have committed 5 felonies and never even know that you have, because of all the things that are on the books. And some of them are crazy. Like one of them that I thought was absolutely amazing. One of them I found out was a hoax, but for the longest time, and this was even taught to me when I was going through the academy, that said it was illegal to take a bite of somebody else's hamburger. What? Again, hang on. Okay. Yeah, I don't know what is going on with Restream today, but it hates me, so I don't know. But anyway, we had some sort of a weird little what just yeah, I don't know. Anyway, let me pull this stuff off the screen so hopefully it'll quit being dumb. Because yeah, for some reason it pulled both of them back into a single pane and started playing the music again. So yeah, did I mention Restream's being a little cranky today? So again, I want to thank everybody who's toughing it out through the glitches. I know I can't see you, but I know a lot of you are paying attention because I'm getting texts and everything else from my phone. So I don't know what's going on. Hopefully we'll have it figured out or sorted out before the weekend news roundup. But we're gonna power through for the day anyway. All right. So, oh yeah. So the whole thing of, it's almost impossible in this country anymore to not be a felon for one reason or the other, even if you don't necessarily know that you are one. All right. So we got to talk about the tariffs, and this was a thing, and I knew it would probably be a thing. I was hopeful when the Supreme Court kept punting and Trump kept doing tariffs anyway, that maybe it wasn't gonna be that big of a deal, but it did kind of based on what I've been able to read today, it did kind of come out exactly how I expected it to. It was a very limited in scope decision. They didn't even address repayment because the court doesn't really have any jurisdiction to do that. All they really said was he couldn't use the emergency declaration that he was using for tariffs, and that if he wanted to do tariffs, he either had to do it through Congress or to use the Emergency Powers Act that is available for tariffs. He would have to do them country by country with detailed explanations as to why he felt the emergencies were warranted, or just do full on sanctions and just cut them off completely. Now, one of the things that I thought was amazing was in the dissent, and I don't remember who it was. I don't have the notes in front of me anymore because, like I said, everything's been being crazy. So instead of being able to do a lot of stuff behind the scenes while I'm playing other stuff, I keep having to fight gremlins. But one of the dissenting justices pointed out that they thought it was absolutely crazy that, these same justices that were dissenting against Trump's ability to do tariffs was actually they were fine with Obama's vaccine mandate. Now, ultimately, that didn't pass the smell test. Now, the thing that I think everybody needs to understand is we do have a tariff decision. Chief Justice John Roberts rules against the president. That's from John Turley. This is from Town Hall. This is Amy Curtis, who I'm sure we'll probably have on later today talking about this. So I'm not going to steal all of her thunder, but I do feel like it needs to be talked about now. At the heart of the issue was whether President Trump had such authority under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, otherwise known as IEPA, a law that allows presidents to take economic actions during a national emergency and to impose broad tariffs without Congress passing tariff laws. In a 6-3 decision, the Supreme Court ruled that President Trump exceeded his authority under this act by imposing broad tariffs without congressional approval, placing new limits on the executive branch's ability to use tariffs as a unilateral economic tool. There's actually a link to the ruling, so I'll be putting out the story here later. The decision affirms critics' arguments that tariffs function as taxes and that the Constitution vests the power to levy taxes in Congress, not the president. The ruling could significantly reshape our trade policy by forcing future administrations to seek legislative approval before imposing sweeping tariffs under emergency powers. Those critics said tariffs are a tax and that the power to levy taxes is a congressional power, and that the Trump tariffs were an end run around Congress. Some Republicans, including Rep. Kevin Kiley of California, and of course Thomas Massey of Kentucky. Pardon me. Thomas Massey of Kentucky, who has turned into such a disappointment, vowed to take a procedural vote on a rule proposed by Speaker of the House Mike Johnson that would ban congressional challenges to tariffs on February 12th. 6 Republicans joined Democrats to pass a resolution condemning President Trump's tariffs against Canada. Any Republican on the House or the Senate that votes against tariffs will seriously suffer the consequences come election time, and that includes primaries, according to President Trump. So the Trump administration actually argued that the IEEPA emergency powers are international or intentionally broad, so the president can respond quickly to national emergencies, and that restricting his power would weaken leverage in negotiations and national security disputes. That was the worry expressed by Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, according to Reuters. So, yeah. So, again, this was basically a a Solomon splitting the baby kind of thing, where they said it's not really that he can't do what he did, because in certain circumstances he can. He just didn't do it properly. So we'll see what comes of it. But while we see what comes of it, we'll be getting into everything else here in just a moment. I'm going to go ahead and take the military tribute break now because, 1, it's kind of long, and 2, I need to take a sip of something because suddenly my voice has decided it hates me again. And it's weird. It's been fine all morning. It's like the second I sit in front of this microphone, it's like, just kidding. You can't do your job today. I know some of you are sad that I'm still trying anyway. That's not nice. That's not nice. Why you gotta be so mean? All right, military tribute, and we'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Before the oath was spoken out loud, before you stood apart from the crowd, there was a moment, quiet and clear, when you chose to stand while others stayed here. You raised your hand with a steady resolve, knowing some nights don't end when the mission's done. Not for glory, not for the pay, but for something worth more than walking away. Only hold the line. They carried the weight where the roads ran long, through dust and heat when the days went on, holding ground mile after mile, doing the work that rarely drew a smile. They stood their post when relief ran late, shoulders squared under the pull of fate. Not chasing headlines, not asking why, just staying put when others pass by. We stand the watch in different ways, different nights, the same long days. One old spoken carried through, wherever duty calls us to. We stand watch over the deep. They kept their watch where the water turns black, miles from shore with no quick way back, measuring time by the rise and the fall, answering duty's unrelenting call. Through silent hours and endless seas, they stood their post in the cold night breeze, guarding the lanes the world depends on, so others slept and the lights stayed on. We stand the watch in different moved as one when the moment came, side by side through fire and rain. First a step where the ground was thin, not for the odds but for the ones beside them.
Trust was earned in the hard way through, every promise carried by the few. No turning back once the line was crossed. They stood shoulder to shoulder as brothers, never counting the cost. We stand the watch in different ways, different nights, the same long day. One oath spoken, carried through, wherever duty calls us to. Air Force, the sky is our domain.
Air Force,
The sky is our domain.
they held their focus where seconds seem eternal, soaring between clouds and blue. Every movement measured and true, knowing what one clean moment could do.
They watch the whole while guarding the small, every mission tied to a larger call. Calm under pressure, steady and clear, keeping the promise from far overhead.
Space Force,
We guard the dark without
they
faith,
keep their vigil
where silence reigns
beyond the weather,
beyond the rain.
watching the paths that the world relies on, long before the warning lights come on.
Cloud, no banners, no clear view,
Just constant care in a canvas full of stars,
standing the watch through the endless night, guarding the systems that keep us in light.
while the watch is kept and the lines hold fast. There are lives still moving on the other side of that.
Empty chairs and quiet phones, long goodbyes that don't feel done.
Names we carry but never say, folded flags and debts we pay. Every service, every scar reaches farther than the uniform ever could.
Coast Guard, we come when it matters most.
They launch into storms when hope feels thin. Turning back isn't an option then. Hands reach out where the waters rise, pulling lives back from the edge of time. No headlines waiting when the call is done, just breathing restored and another life won. Every rescue, every return, a quiet promise kept in the worst conditions.
We stand the watch
In different ways, different nights, the same long day.
one oath spoken, carried through, wherever duty calls us to.
For the ones who raise the right hand high,
Swore the oath and didn't ask us why.
for the nights you stood where freedom cost.
We remember, we on, we won't forget the loss.
From the ground to the sea to the open sky, to the guardians above where the silent stars fly. Every branch, every badge, every battle scar, because you stood.
We live free,
Slowly, know
we stand here freely.
because others stood before us. We accept the weight of what was given and the cost that came with it. We promise to remember those who serve, those who stand watch still, and those who never came home.
All right, folks, we are back. We are live. And again, whether you are a first responder, were a first responder, whether you ever served in our military or whether you're still serving in our military, Friday is the day that we at the Rick Robinson Show and KLRN Radio say thank you for your service. I don't care if you're a dispatcher. I don't care if you spent your time in the military as a filing clerk. You did a job a lot of other folks don't want to do. So thank you very much for taking the time to do that. Now, we are going to be joining a stream that is in progress once I get this squared away so that it doesn't glitch out on me again, because everything's been being dumb today. So we're going to do that. And then we're going to come back over here and then we are going to, I was going to talk about the tariffs, but I think POTUS might be talking about them right now. So we're going to join a White House briefing in progress. Uno momento, por favor.
So I'm allowed to destroy the country, but I can't charge them a little fee. I could give them a little two-cent fee, but I cannot charge under any circumstances. I cannot charge them anything. Think of that. How ridiculous is that? I'm allowed to embargo them. I'm allowed to tell them you can't do business in the United States anymore. We want you out of here. But if I want to charge them $10, I can't do that. It's incorrect. Their decision's incorrect. But it doesn't matter because we have very powerful alternatives that have been approved by this decision. You know, they've been approved by the decision for those that thought they had us. And they're saying that I have the absolute right to license, but not the right to charge a license fee. So think of that. I have the right to license, which is a very powerful word. In many ways, license is more powerful than tariffs. In fact, I was thinking about using it. But they came up with the idea that I can license, just like the people that were opposing me told them to do, but not the right to charge a license fee. Think of that. Who ever heard of such a thing? What license has ever been issued without the right to charge a fee? You get a license, you charge a fee. It's automatic, but not with this court. But now the court has given me the unquestioned right to ban all sorts of things from coming into our country, to destroy foreign countries, but a much more powerful right than many people ever thought we even had, but not the right to charge a fee. How crazy is that? Our country is the hottest country anywhere in the world right now. And it was a dead country 1.5 years ago under an incompetent president. But now I'm going to go in a different direction, probably the direction that I should have gone the first time, but I read the language. I'm very good at reading language, and it read our way 100%, but now I'll go the way I could have gone originally, which is even stronger than our original choice. As Justice Kavanaugh, whose stock has gone so up, you have to see, I'm so proud of him, wrote in his dissent, although I firmly disagree with the court's holding today, the decision might not substantially constrain a president's ability to order tariffs going forward. So, think of that. The decision might not substantially constrain. And it doesn't, he's right. In fact, I can charge much more than I was charging. So I'm going to just start. Although I firmly disagree with the court's holding today, the decision might not substantially constrain a president's ability to order tariffs going forward. That's because numerous other federal statutes, which is so true, authorize the president to impose tariffs and might justify most, if not all, of the tariffs issued in this case. Even more tariffs, actually. Those statutes include, think of that, those statutes include, for example, the Trade Expansion Act of 1962, Section 232. All of these things I know so well. The Trade Act of 1974, Sections 122, 201, 301. And the Tariff Act of 1930, Section 338, all clear. But it's a little bit longer process. I thought I'd make things simple, but they didn't let us do that. I would like to thank Justice Kavanaugh for frankly, his genius and his great ability. Very proud of that appointment. In actuality, while I am sure that they did not mean to do so, the Supreme Court's decision today made a president's ability to both regulate trade and impose tariffs more powerful and more crystal clear rather than less. I don't think they meant that. I'm sure they didn't. It's terrible. And to think that the Democrats who oppose this only because they want to go the opposite way, they'd like to pack the court. They want to put on 21 people. They want to pack the court, pack the Supreme Court. Maybe they should do it. Maybe they would be better off if they did it. They want to pack the court. They want to do anything to hurt our country. There will no longer be any doubt, and the income coming in and the protection of our companies and country will actually increase because of this decision. I don't think the court meant that, but it's the way it is. Based on long-standing law and hundreds of victories, and even, as I was pointed out before, even thousands of victories over the years, to the contrary, the Supreme Court did not overrule tariffs. They merely overruled a particular use of IEEPA tariffs. And essentially, it's used to get a fee. I can do anything I want with IEEPA, anything. I just can't charge anybody for it. I can license, I just can't charge them. It's ridiculous, but it's okay because we have other ways, numerous other ways. The ability to block, embargo, restrict, license, or impose any other condition on a foreign country's ability to conduct trade with the United States under IEEPA has been fully confirmed by this decision. So now there's no doubt, because, you know, there were a lot of questions about tariffs because no president was smart enough to use them to protect our country from those countries and businesses that were ripping us off. You took a look at the deficits that we had with some of these countries. It was disgraceful what they got away with for many, many decades. But now we know, because this decision affirms all those things that some people weren't sure about. In order to protect, and it says so, in order to protect our country, a president can actually charge more tariffs than I was charging in the past period of a year under the various tariff authorities. So we can use other of the statutes, other of the tariff authorities, which have also been confirmed and are fully allowed. Therefore, effective immediately, all national security tariffs under Section 232 and existing Section 301 tariffs, they're existing, they're there, remain in place, fully in place, and in full force and effect. Today, I will sign an order to impose a 10% global tariff under Section 122 over and above our normal tariffs already being charged. And we're also initiating several Section 301 and other investigations to protect our country from unfair trading practices of other countries and companies. Thank you for your attention to this matter, and I say quite simply, which I've said for a long time, make America great again. And interestingly, we've already made it great, so I don't have to use that, but I don't think we'll ever give up on MAGA. MAGA is always going to be with us. If you have a few questions, you can let us know. But just to end, so we're going forward, we will be able to take in more money, and there'll no longer be doubt, because there was always doubt. I know the people that brought the lawsuit, and you know, they're sleazebags, major sleazebags, but I know them, and they're foreign country centric. They were sending things into our country, and the people representing them knew full well, but they were sending things into our country, and they were beneficial to other countries, but very, very bad for us. And I stopped it, and we'll just keep it going. So we have more of a, we have a totally firm decision now, and I don't think the court meant it, because the court doesn't show great spirit toward our country, in my opinion. A lot of bad decisions, but there are usually ways around it. This is something we could have done, as Justice Kavanaugh said, we could have done this originally, but we're doing it now, and the numbers could be far greater than the hundreds of billions we've already taken in. Yeah, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I'm very curious. You've
I didn't
spoken
call
about
you in the red.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. Justice Thomas and Alito, as you know, are the most conservative constitutional justices. Do you think that you'll get to appoint 2 more justices later this term with similar ideologies? And what type of vetting process will they go through to ensure they uphold
I don't know, but they're
the
great
Constitution?
justices. That's all I can say. And I hope they're going to be around a long time. I hope they're going to stay healthy. They're great people. They're great. And Justice Alito, too, to add to the group. These are great. These are great men.
Right.
They're with a great love of our country and a great understanding of the law.
Mr. President, are you going to ask Congress to take additional action on tariffs now?
No, I don't need to. It's already been approved. I mean, I would ask Congress and probably get it. When people look at the real numbers, and you look at hundreds of billions of dollars that have come into our country. Yesterday, I was at a steel plant, as you know, and I went to great place, great plant, great, wonderful people. And they were telling me, I said to them, you were there, a lot of the press in this room. Of course, I don't think this plane's big enough to take the press in this room, but a lot of the press right here. We're in Georgia. And I said to the owner, I made a speech at a factory. They make steel products. And I said, how are you? Nice to meet you. How's business? President, I'd love to kiss you. This is a very powerful man. I don't want to be kissed by that man. But a very powerful, strong man. He's been in the steel business for many years. His father started it. And he said, sir, I want to kiss you. I said, why? He said, because we were down to working 1 hour a week, and then you came in and imposed tariffs, and all of that foreign junk that they were dropping into our country stopped. And we're now going to double shifts, 7 days a week, and we may be very soon going to 24 hours around the clock, almost 7 days a week. He said, sir, I want to kiss you so badly. And I said, no, thank you. But you know what? He just to finalize it, he said, oh, this is a great place in Georgia. He said, all up and down the highway, same exact answer, sir. We're all going out of business. We're going to go bankrupt. We're all going out of business. And now every one of us are thriving, and we're hiring people like we haven't. He said, like I've never, and he's been in business for, I think, 45 years, like we've never hired before. That's because of tariffs. And we're going to keep it going the same way. And you're going to start to see the results in a year from now when all those factories start that are under construction right now. You see all the construction numbers are so good. Those construction workers are building factories that are going to be open, including not only AI, which is big, but car plants coming in from Canada, who ripped us off for 30% of our market. Mexico ripped us off for a big portion. Over the years, they've taken our market. They've taken our cars. They manufacture them in Japan, Germany, and all over the place because nobody's standing in this position. The position I have as President of the United States had the insight, the courage, well, I don't know what it is, to charge tariffs. You can make your product outside. You can put our people out of business. You can put everybody on the unemployment rolls. But if you're going to make a car in some other country, you're going to pay a 15, 20, 30% tariff. And those things would have never happened. We wouldn't have lost our business. Same thing with, as an example, Taiwan. Taiwan came in. They stole our chip business. They make chips. For 30 years longer, they made chip. And they put our companies. Intel would be now the largest company. I saved Intel. I literally saved it at the beginning of this administration. And now all those companies in Taiwan are building factories in Arizona, Texas, and various other places because they don't want to pay tariffs. They're all pouring into the United States. But just like that great patriot said yesterday, sir, what you've done, nobody thought was possible. And Steve Moore, a highly respected economist, came into my office yesterday. He said, you've done something nobody's ever done. 22 Nobel Prize winners in economics said we would right now be in a recession. And you said, no, we're going to have a booming country. We're going to have a booming country. You were right. All 22 were wrong, and you were right. This country is booming, and it's booming because of the election on November 5th, and it's booming for another reason. It's booming because of tariffs. Yeah, please, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. You said ahead of this
Thank you, Mr.
decision
President.
that if the Supreme
Yeah,
Court
please,
ruled,
go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. What will you say to foreign nations who seek to renegotiate their deals? And what did you mean a moment ago when you said that the Supreme Court has been swayed by foreign interests?
Well, I think that foreign interests are represented by people that I believe have undue influence. They have a lot of influence over the Supreme Court, whether it's through fear or respect or friendships, I don't know. But I know some of the people that were involved on the other side, and I don't like them. I think they're real slime balls. And got to do what's right for the country. You got to do what's right for the Constitution. That's why I respect so much Justice Thomas and Alito, Kavanaugh, because they not only dissented, their dissent is so strong. When you read their dissent, you know, a lot of times you'll read a dissent and it's like, well, you don't know, it could go either way. There's no other way. The good news is, it's like Justice Kavanaugh said, very strongly said, you have other ways you can go. You don't have to go that way. You can go other way. There are numerous other ways you can go. And frankly, this should have been done by presidents many years ago. They allowed our country to be eaten alive. We lost 50% of our car business. We used to make cars. We made all the cars. And then Mexico came, Canada came, Japan and Germany. But they're all coming back now. They're all coming back at record levels. No, you please. I'm not talking to you. I don't talk to CNN. It's fake news. Go ahead.
Mr. President, yesterday you made the case that the economy is the hottest it's been in a long time. Right. January jobs report beat expectations, CPI report beat expectations, real wages are up. What would you tell Americans who are worried that this decision will kind of throw the economy that you have projected going in the right direction at a very rapid pace off track?
Well, thank you for the question. And I will say this, we really are at a very important point. I've been waiting for this decision so long. They could have made this decision a long time ago. Not complex. They're wrong on it. It's a ridiculous decision. But they should have released this a long time ago. We waited months. And that gave uncertainty. Now we have certainty. And I think you're going to see the country get much stronger because of it. Look, we were ripped off by almost every country in the world. If you look at the surpluses, almost every country in the world that did business with us, our people were stupid. And I blame presidents for it because they're ultimately the leader. We were being ripped off by almost every single country in the world, had some massive surpluses. China had hundreds of billions of dollars in surpluses with the United States. They rebuilt China. They rebuilt the army. We built China's army by allowing that to happen. I have a great relationship with President Xi, but he respects our country now. Now, what we've done, I charged China a 20% tariff as a penalty for sending fentanyl in. And that was 20 times more than they could make by selling fentanyl. And I said, you know, at some point you're going to say, like, and they have reduced it. You know, fentanyl is down by more than 30% coming into our country. Part of that is a strong border. We have a strong border now. But thank you. Thank you for your question.
Mr. President, sir, you warned once in a social media post that if the Supreme Court did this, shot down your tariffs, the U.S. would be, quote, financially defenseless. Are we financially defenseless right now?
No, because we're doing something in a different way. We're doing something in a very powerful way, and we're using things that some people thought we should have used in the first place. But it's more complicated. It's a little more complicated. The process takes a little more time, but the end result is going to get us more money, and I think it's going to be great. Yeah, please. Peter, go ahead.
Thank you, President Trump. So, since Liberation Day, there's about $175 billion in tariff revenue that is now in limbo. Do you have to refund $175 billion?
Think of it, Peter. Very fair question. They take months and months to write an opinion, and they don't even discuss that point. We've taken in hundreds of billions of dollars, not millions, hundreds of billions of dollars. And so I said, well, what happens to all the money that we took in? It wasn't discussed. Wouldn't you think they would have put one sentence in there saying that keep the money or don't keep the money, right? I guess it has to get litigated for the next 2 years. So they write this terrible, defective decision, totally defective. It's almost like not written by smart people. And what they do, they don't even talk about that. Your question is very basic. That was the first question I asked also to make you feel good. I said, what about all the money that we've taken in? Sir, they don't discuss that. How crazy is that?
What you're saying is, are you saying that you don't plan to honor refunds for companies that file for them?
I just told you the answer, right? I told you the answer. It's not discussed. We'll end up being in court for the next 5 years. Go ahead, Green.
Thank you, Mr. President. When you are talking about the relationship with countries that you have sought trade deals with, do you anticipate that they will seek to renegotiate those? What do you say to them, and do you view this as a potential undermining power for your
Well, we're going
negotiations?
straight ahead with 10% straight across the board, which was the absolute right to do. And that's taking place. That's a lot of money coming into our country. And then during that period of about 5 months, we are doing the various investigations necessary to put fair tariffs or tariffs, period, on other countries. So we're doing that period, but we're immediately instituting the 10% provision, which we're allowed to do. And in the end, I think we'll take in more money than we've taken in before.
Mr. President, you've used the tariff revenue to pay for a host of federal policies. You claim that they will pay for them. What happens
Well,
to
like
those
the
things?
farmers, we took care of farmers. You know, the farmers were mistreated by foreign countries very badly, very, very badly. And last week I gave them $12 billion out of tariff money. We intend to, out of tariff money, because just so you understand, we have tariffs. We just have them in a different way. And now they've been confirmed by the Supreme Court of the United States. So there's no longer that question out there about tariffs. And we'll be taking in hundreds of billions of dollars. And countries that have treated us badly will have to pay a price for treating us badly. And countries that have been good to us will be treated very well. We just left the top person in a place called Vietnam, just left my office. Great gentleman, strong and smart. He said, you know, I think this means you're allowed to charge us more tariffs than before. And Canada said to Jameson, I might want to say it, Jameson, but Canada said, I hope you win this decision, because if you don't win, you'll actually be allowed to charge us, with a little additional work, higher tariffs. Jameson, you want to comment on that?
Yes, sir. So to the President's point, we have a lot of tools out there. We have Section 122, which will be implemented today. It will be signed today and implemented very shortly. We have Section 301 investigations, which are incredibly legally durable, where we can investigate and address unfair trading practices that have led to our huge trade deficit. And so you can look forward in the coming days and weeks to seeing all of that come out, and we're going to keep continuity in the program. We're going to keep addressing this so that the deficit can keep going down. That's the trend it has, and we can make America great again.
No.
Several of Republicans in Congress have supported this decision by the Supreme Court. And Hakeem Jeffries, the Democratic leader, has called you a wannabe king. Why wouldn't
him a low IQ?
But why wouldn't
he doesn't even know? And I watched him the other day interview. The guy doesn't even know what a tariff is.
But there's been bipartisan criticism
No, not
of
bipartisan.
the tariffs.
Excuse me.
There's several
A few
Republicans
people.
have said that.
Yeah, a few people.
Wouldn't you just work with Congress to come up with a plan?
I don't have to
push tariffs.
I have the
through?
right to do tariffs, and I've always had the right to do tariffs, and it's all been approved by Congress. So there's no reason to do it. All we're doing is we're going through a little bit more complicated process. Not complicated very much, but a little more complicated than what we had. We'll be able to take in tariffs, more tariffs. And the Congress people and the
Voted
Congress.
down the Canadian tariffs last week.
Yeah,
There's
yeah,
been votes
you
in
know
the
why?
Senate against it.
Yeah, because we lost 2 Republicans or 3 Republicans because they're not good Republicans. What you don't say, you don't say that we got 215 votes.
You need 218 for something to pass.
Yeah, sure we do. We might have lost 3 votes, and what was the score on the Republican side? 215 to 3, right? But you don't say that. We have great unity. There's great unity in the Republican Party, and I hope everyone's going to vote Republican, because otherwise you won't have a country left, because these people have been they are destroying our country. Please.
Mr. President, the 122 tariffs, that 10%,
Yeah.
is that going to be for 150 days, or do you want to charge that indefinitely?
We have a right to do pretty much what we want to do, but we're going to charge it starting effectively, I think it's 3 days from now. Yeah, please.
Mr. President, you speak to a lot of factory workers, a lot of manufacturing workers. What does the Supreme Court ruling say? What's that message to those factory workers?
Well, I think the factory workers are happy because we're now telling them that they're going to look. The man I met with yesterday, who owned a factory, was out of business. He was out of business. And now he's employing 5 times. In fact, I walked in, he's got a brand new crane. I said, how old is that crane? We got it in December. He's allowed to write it off in 1 minute. The Great Big Beautiful Act gave no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, no tax on overtime. He said this great big beautiful bill, frankly, has been the best thing that's ever happened for the workers of the, much more so than for rich people. The only thing it does for rich people, it allows them to hire a lot more people. But when I saw him, and then he said, it's all up and down the line. This is a place in Georgia, all up and down, other factories doing different, not only steel products, different. He said, every one of us was out of business. We could barely make it. Some of them were down to less than an hour a week. Think of it, 1 hour a week to make just a few little trinkets or whatever they make. Now they're going round the clock. I had it a month ago. I went to Michigan, went to Ford, and I met with Bill Ford, the head of Ford, and we were in one of the biggest plants, an original plant from the early 1900s, where, by the way, I might add this, it's not really relevant, but it's all relevant. Murders are down the lowest since 1900, around the time that he had this plant. That's 125 years. We have the lowest murder rate. Okay. And our crime is way down in the country. The factories that we're talking about, the people that we're talking about, they are so thrilled with Trump. So whether we charge IEEPA tariffs or whether we charge tariffs under a different section, that's what we're going to be doing. There's no way we can lever. This is what happened to our country. This is why we owe $38 trillion, which we'll get rid of in pretty good course. We have a very incompetent Fed chairman who likes high interest rates. For political reasons, he likes them. But we're going to have somebody very good. Interest rates should come down very substantially. I think we should pay the lowest interest rates on the planet. There should be no country, and we don't do that. We're number 38. This is just bad policy for a long period of time. But what's happened is we've made America strong again. We've made America great again. We should pay. As an example, the country of Switzerland, we were getting almost no tariffs from them. We had a $40 billion deficit. And the prime minister called me up. She said, but we are a small country, because I said we're going to raise it to 39% from nothing. That would have rendered them not very successful, as opposed to right now they're considered elite. But if we put a tariff, they would, and I realized then, she said, but sir, we are a small country. I said, you're a small country with a big deficit. For us, you're making a lot of money off the United States. If we do that, a lot of these elite countries, they're elite because we let them make so much money. And I want them to do well, but I don't want them to do well on the backs of the American taxpayer. So I appreciate your question. I think it's a reasonable answer.
President Trump, you said that you were disappointed with that, but were you surprised with this decision? What you felt when you...
I was surprised because I thought that what we did was, number one, according to, I mean, I read the paragraphs. I read very well. Great comprehension. I read everything there is to read, and I said, we can't lose this case. But we can when judges are political, when they want to be politically correct, when they're catering to a group of people in D.C. maybe. I don't know what it is, because when you read it, there's no other interpretation. There is no other interpretation. But it's okay, because what has come out, I'll say it for the third time and maybe the last time in a while, is that we've taken the uncertainty of tariffs out, because we had uncertainty. We got sued by sleazebags, I know them well, that are very outside country, China-centric, but outside country-centric. And they're going to end up not doing as well as they did before.
Folks, we are out of time and a little bit over. Don't forget, come back in about an hour for the Weekend News Roundup. I'm Rick Robinson. We'll be getting more into this tariffs thing because I've been doing some reading while I've been listening to the president. But bye, everybody.